Eli Carter didn't need much. The sun rose the same way every day on Arden 7, casting golden streaks across the cornfields that waved like ocean tides in the wind. Automated tillers hummed beneath the soil, and solar collectors gleamed on every roof tile. The old farmhouse creaked in the wind, holding the ghosts of a different life. His boots hit the dust with quiet certainty, and the smell of dew mixed with faint machine oil. Out here, you didn't need noise to feel alive. He didn't talk much anymore. After 30 years of military service and 5 years since burying his boy, there wasn't much to say. People had moved on from the war. The colonies were rebuilding. Trade routes resumed. But Eli had chosen distance. This patch of land, long abandoned after the evacuation, was his now. Bought with veteran credits and guilt. He spent his mornings in rhythm: feed the chickens, skin the sky, check the harvest spots, mend what the wind tried to break overnight. A reliable routine. Sometimes he'd hum old Terran blues songs to the wind. They didn't echo much. On the third day of the 7th lunar cycle, he felt something off. The wind had a sour edge to it, like scorched metal. He squinted westward, beyond the grain fields. The treetops were scorched black in a narrow arc. He assumed a cargo drop gone wrong. Probably just junk. He made a note to collect anything salvageable once the chores were done. But that night, the wind howled differently. Animals stirred uneasily. His drone sensors flagged movement along the northern ridge, small, erratic, not matching local fauna. The alert blinked once and faded. He chalked it up to one of the bots glitching. It happened after dust storms. The next morning, a trail of flattened stalks cut through the lower field. Something had passed through. Not heavy, but desperate. Eli followed the path with the calm of a man who didn't scare easily. Past the last fence post, in the shade of broken pines and scorched bark, he saw it. It lay curled beneath a torn emergency foil sheet. Where had it gotten at? Shaking, ribs showing through pale scales that shimmered between gray and silver blue. A tail tucked tightly against itself. 2 stubby wings quivered with each shallow breath. The eyes opened when he approached, reptilian, vertical pupils deep amber. It didn't growl. It didn't lunge. It didn't flee. It whimpered. Eli stood still, one hand slowly lifting his cap. No species registry came to mind. It wasn't one of the local terrafauna. It sure as hell wasn't Earth native. Whatever it was hurt, starving, and young. Its jaw trembled as it tried to raise its head, and a small wheeze escaped its throat, half cry, half croak. His instincts told him to walk away. Not his business. Not his problem. But there was something in the way it looked at him. Not like prey. Not like threat. More like recognition. He reached into his jacket slowly and pulled out a protein bar, one of the old rations from his deployment days. He peeled it halfway and tossed it gently near the creature. It took a sniff, then another, before lurching forward and devouring it whole, wrapper and all. The thing immediately gagged. Eli snorted. "Too much iron in that one, huh?" He shook his head, almost smiling. He took 3 slow steps forward, crouched, and pulled the second bar apart with care. This time, he handed it straight out. The creature inched forward, sniffed his glove, and took it gently. No claws. No sudden moves. Just trust. He spent the next few hours rigging a makeshift shelter in the barn's old medical stall. It wasn't much, some thermal blankets, a cracked med scanner, and a few 4 pouches filled with rehydration fluids. The creature lay there silently, occasionally glancing at him, always tracking his movements. He didn't call the authorities. He didn't file a report. He just kept looking at the thing. A part of him, the part that buried a son on New Cardiff Prime, recognized something he hadn't felt in years: responsibility. By dusk, it was sleeping, belly slightly distended, small breaths pushing through flared nostrils. Its scales shifted color with its heartbeat, a pulsing rhythm like a distant drum. Eli sat outside the barn with a mug of black coffee, staring at the stars that had brought this thing crashing into his life. He didn't know what it was. But it was hungry. It was hurt. And now it was his. It was eating again, this time with purpose. Goat milk warm just above room temp, delivered through a rubber-tipped bottle Eli found buried in the supply shed. The creature, he had stopped calling it, in his head, gripped the bottle with surprisingly dexterous claws. It drank greedily, but paused to look at him between gulps, as if gauging his reactions. He had named it Ash. The color of its wings earned it, a shifting tone like scorched silver after a forge run too hot. It didn't protest the name. In fact, after 3 days, it seemed to recognize it. Ash. A soft hiss from Eli's lips, followed by a nod, and the dragonling, because that's what it was now, whether science agreed or not, would react. Ears up. Eyes alert. It learned fast. Eli fed it a mix of farm protein packs, hydroponic greens, and nutrient gel originally meant for livestock emergencies. Ash devoured them all with a hunger that bordered on desperation. Its body grew quickly, bones thickening, tail lengthening, wings starting to stretch. By the 5th day, the old barn's medical stall barely contained it. Burn marks appeared where its breath hit wooden surfaces. Heat radiated from its skin during sleep. Eli added heat-shielded panels to the stall walls and rerouted excess power to cooling fans. Ash tried to mimic him. It watched how he opened the feed lockers, operated the farm console, turned tools in his hand. It attempted similar movements with its claws. It succeeded in opening the greenhouse door after watching him once. It startled Eli the first time it chirped back when spoken to. Not a word, but a clear attempt to mimic tone and rhythm. Communication had begun, without either of them meaning to. Eli ran DNA scans out of curiosity. The machine spat out an error code, unidentified genome. No match across human, xenofauna, or known synthetics. Ash wasn't catalogued. That made it valuable, or dangerous. Possibly both. He didn't care. He reinforced the barn anyway, just in case. Not to keep Ash in, but to keep others out. The local wildlife had started avoiding the perimeter. Heat sensors caught brief glimpses of native predators pacing the edges of the fields, but none dared approach. Ash had a scent, or perhaps a presence, that disturbed the natural order. It roamed now, under Eli's watch. Kept close, always within call range. It didn't try to escape. It wasn't afraid. It was loyal. One morning, Eli caught it attempting flight. Short, frantic bursts. It leapt from fence post to roof, wings flapping hard but clumsy. It failed, crashed, tried again. Determined. Unstoppable. By evening, it managed a glide across the southern field, landing face first in the compost pile. It chirped in triumph, and Eli found himself laughing for the first time in months. He started noticing other things. The dragonling responded to emotional cues. If Eli was frustrated, Ash paced nervously. If Eli was calm, Ash curled up quietly. If Eli talked aloud, out of habit more than anything, Ash listened. Maybe not to the words, but to the meaning behind them. On the 11th day, Ash defended the coop. A wild pack animal had breached the fence. Before Eli could reach for his plasma rifle, it was already over. Ash had leapt, wings snapping open in a burst of heat, and knocked the beast aside. It didn't kill it, just stunned it, herded it away, then returned to the coop and lay in front of it like a guard dog. No command had been given. No reward offered. It had chosen. That night, Eli adjusted the thermal readings in Ash's stall. Growth was accelerating. Bone density scans showed an increase of nearly 20% in under 2 weeks. He wasn't raising a pet. He was raising something engineered for endurance, aggression, survival. And yet, all it showed him was curiosity, hunger, and affection. The first time Ash nuzzled him, head pressed gently against his side, eyes closed, purring like a fusion engine, Eli froze. His hand hovered over its ridged brow before settling gently between the eyes. The skin there was warmer than expected, almost feverish. But the gesture was unmistakable. Trust. Not programmed. Not forced. Chosen. Eli didn't sleep that night. He sat on the porch with a warm blanket and stared out into the fields, watching the stars. He wasn't just keeping a creature alive. He was part of something neither of them understood. Ash had come from fire and wreckage and fear. But here, under old Terran skies and rows of corn, it had found something alien to its nature. Peace. Ash was nearly the size of Eli's truck now, wingspans stretching wide enough to knock over fencing when he misjudged a turn. His movements had refined, precise, deliberate, balanced. He flew without effort, gliding low over crops, stirring the soil with downdrafts. His intelligence wasn't just reactive anymore. It was strategic. He watched, assessed, and learned faster than Eli could keep up. Words were still beyond him, but comprehension wasn't. A point, a gesture, a tool passed hand to claw, Ash understood. Then came the noise. Not natural, not local. A whine in the sky, steady, cold, clinical. Eli tracked it with a weather drone, confirmed it wasn't corporate. The ship that landed wasn't built by humans. No lights, no welcome signal, no insignia, just a flat black shape folding itself open with geometric precision. 3 figures stepped out, clad in armor that shimmered like water and moved with reptilian efficiency. They scanned the farm with a sweep of their visors, paused when they saw Ash perched on the greenhouse roof. They identified themselves as Harkonnen, genetic engineers from a system humanity had briefly clashed with during the war. Their tone was flat, devoid of any cultural exchange. They'd come for what they called Specimen XG Delta 7, which they claimed had crash-landed during a biotransport transfer. A prototype. A lost asset. Ash. Eli didn't say much at first. Just looked at them, then at Ash, who had moved closer, teeth bared. The Harkonnen continued. Ash wasn't a pet. He wasn't an animal. He was a weapon, engineered to evolve in hostile environments, imprint on dominant species, and burn through anything standing in his path. Designed for planetary destabilization. Programmed to obey only once matured. Their war beast. Their property. Eli said no. One word. No negotiation. No discussion. Just flat refusal. The Harkonnen offered credits, tech, even territorial rights. Eli stood firm. He stays. No law backed him. No government nearby to enforce a ruling. Just one man and his dragon against protocol and power. Ash didn't wait for orders. He stepped between Eli and the aliens, wings extended, scales flashing in violent pulses. The air grew hotter. The ground beneath him cracked. A high-pitched whine built in his throat. The Harkonnen raised containment rods, prepared for forced retrieval. Ash unleashed heat. Not fire in the traditional sense, pure thermal displacement. A blast of raw energy that distorted the air, melted the ground in a perfect arc, and knocked 2 of the aliens off their feet. The third barely activated a shield in time. The ship's outer paneling warped where the blast grazed it. Not a scratch on Eli. The Harkonnen retreated, leaving behind only the stench of burned ozone and scorched dirt. But their message remained. They would return. Not for negotiation, retrieval by force. Eli reviewed the footage from the barn's surveillance node. The precision of Ash's blast. The calculated restraint. The fact that nothing nearby, no structure, no life, was touched unless targeted. Ash wasn't out of control. He had chosen. Again. That night, Eli opened his old field journal. Started documenting Ash's behavior, development, heat output, language patterns. Not for profit. Not for publication. For protection. He knew what was coming. Ash wasn't just special. He was unprecedented. And others would come. He dug up a military-grade beacon, once banned under peace treaties. Wired it through the mainframe. Not to call for help, but to send data. A message through old war channels. Not to Earth. To anyone listening. He is not yours. He is not a weapon. He is mine. Asterisk asterisk. Within hours, replies pinged back. Human colonies, fringe sympathizers, war veterans, even former enemies. Curious. Intrigued. Some supportive. Some alarmed. But it was spreading. Eli had triggered something bigger than this farm. Ash watched him finish the transmission. He sat next to Eli, pressed his warm side against the man's leg, and let out a low, steady hum, a sound Eli now recognized as comfort. That night, Ash spoke his first clear word. "Stay." Eli didn't flinch. Just reached out and rested his hand on Ash's scaled neck. "I will." The Harkonnen returned in the dead hours, not in threes, but in dozens. Their ship darkened the sky, blotting out stars Eli had known for years. Drones swarmed first, silent, wingless, skimming across the ground in tight formation. Their scanners pulsed, slicing through every structure, calculating variables. They weren't here to negotiate. They came to extract. Ash was ready. He had been waiting. No panic. No aggression. Focused. Poised. His scales no longer flickered randomly. They pulsed with patterns Eli had come to recognize as strategic signals. Ash understood what they wanted and what it meant if they won. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was defiance. Eli activated the fallback grid. Not a fortress, but decades of field knowledge repurposed, EMP mines buried under the crop rows, signal scramblers wrapped in old tractor parts, surveillance towers linked to decentralized nodes. Every inch of his land had been quietly turned into a trap. Not for slaughter, but for delay. Delay meant exposure. And exposure gave them a fighting chance. The first wave hit the perimeter hard. Ash launched himself into the air before they reached the fence. He no longer struggled to stay aloft. He glided with lethal grace, a streak of molten silver against the night sky. His breath wasn't just heat now, it carried density, force, precision. He didn't burn everything. He chose targets, disabling drones mid-flight, shattering containment shells before they deployed. Not wild. Calculated. The Harkonnen underestimated human stubbornness. They breached the barn expecting soft resistance. Instead, they met electrified choke points, autonomous turrets made from gutted irrigation systems, and a dragon that moved like fire given thought. Eli moved through it all like a ghost, sealing traps, rerouting power, locking doors behind him. This was war, but one he trained for his whole life. Ash took a plasma bolt to the flank. It seared, hissed, tore a line across his ribs. He didn't fall. He didn't roar. He landed hard, exhaled, and turned with frightening stillness. His next blast wasn't defensive. It was deliberate retribution. A 10-meter arc of scorched earth marked the return volley. The invaders dropped their weapons and ran from something they realized was not merely experimental, it was aware. And it was angry. Inside the farmhouse, Eli rerouted the last of the generator's reserves into the pulse array. One shot left. Enough to broadcast a final message across restricted channels. No encryption. Just the raw truth. They've come for what's not theirs. He stands with us. And we will not yield. Ash dragged himself into the clearing, blood running between his scales. His wings trembled, not from fear, but exhaustion. Yet he stood over Eli like a sentinel. Not guarding territory. Guarding family. The word didn't need to be spoken. It existed between them, unshakable. Then the sky lit up. Not from Harkonnen weapons, but from human ships descending through the stratosphere. Eli hadn't expected a response. He had sent the message more as a line in the sand, not a beacon for salvation. But someone had listened. Multiple factions. Veterans, mercenaries, colonies with debts unpaid and memories unforgotten. They didn't come for politics. They came for principle. The Harkonnen, once surgical and silent, faltered. Their formation broke. They withdrew not out of fear, but calculation. The presence of multiple human ships escalated the conflict beyond retrieval protocol. They couldn't risk open war. Not over one asset, no matter how advanced. They left without ceremony, their ship folding into itself and vanishing beyond sensor range. Ash collapsed the moment they were gone. Not unconscious, but drained. Eli caught him as much as one could catch something that large. Held his head, whispered nothing words, not to calm, but to stay grounded. He didn't ask if Ash was okay. He already knew. Ash had given everything he had. Not because he was designed to. Because he chose to. The humans who landed didn't approach like saviors. They came as witnesses. Doctors scanned Ash from a distance. Engineers marveled. Soldiers stood in quiet respect. None tried to take him. No one dared. They asked Eli if he wanted to relocate. Secure housing. Protection. Support. He said no. Ash had fought for this land. These fields. These skies. They were his home now. No walls needed. Just space. Just choice. And Ash, bandaged, scarred, and weary, lifted his head slowly and said one word again, quieter this time. Stay. Eli smiled. Always. The seasons turned slowly after that night. Ash healed faster than expected, though his scars remained, thick, gleaming ridges that caught the sun like metal. He didn't limp. Didn't falter. If anything, the pain sharpened him. He trained himself in silence, pushing his limits daily, his body adapting to every injury as if learning from it. His mind had matured too. He no longer reacted with instinct alone. Now, he paused, measured, predicted. He had become something beyond what the Harkonnen had made. He wasn't a weapon. He was a will. Word spread. The footage from the defense, the Harkonnen retreat, the human arrival, none of it was classified. It couldn't be. It had already gone viral across colony networks, forums, even secure channels. Ash wasn't a myth. He was a fact. A living contradiction to everything people assumed about engineered life. And more importantly, a symbol. Pilgrims came, not in masses, but in quiet, deliberate trickles. Scientists, veterans, survivors of burned colonies. They didn't come to capture or experiment. They came to ask. What was Ash? How had he chosen humanity over his creators? Eli didn't have answers. He just told them what he knew, that Ash had seen him as a person before seeing himself as property. Others didn't care for stories. They wanted control. Corporations sent soft agents posing as journalists. A few came disguised as traders, bringing suspiciously advanced tech and asking too many precise questions. They all left with nothing. Ash didn't threaten them. He simply watched. That was enough. One wrong step, and they felt the heat shift around them like the edge of a storm. Then came the delegation. Not Harkonnen. Not human either. A council of neutral worlds, concerned over what they called the escalation of post-biological entities. They didn't threaten Eli. They offered terms: sanctuary, oversight, integration. They spoke in layers, implying danger while pretending diplomacy. Ash listened from a distance, and didn't blink once during the entire discussion. When they were done, he answered before Eli could. No. That was it. He didn't need to roar or burn anything down. His refusal was enough to fracture the illusion of negotiation. The delegation left the next morning. No incident. But the message was clear. Ash was not under anyone's jurisdiction. Months passed. Ash began to communicate more. Not fluently, not like a human, but effectively. He understood syntactic structure. He used signs, sounds, short phrases. Now safe, ready, watch, hunt. He knew how to warn, how to reassure. He even taught Eli a few gestures back, combinations of wing flicks and tail movements that conveyed emotion better than words. It wasn't a language. It was a bond. One night, as stars fell across the sky in a meteor drift, Ash stood beside Eli and asked a new question. Why? Eli didn't ask him to clarify. He didn't need to. He answered without turning his head. Because someone had to. And you were worth it. Ash didn't reply. He just stared at the stars, his breathing slow and steady, the scar along his flank pulsing faintly with inner heat. Not long after, Ash started flying further. Not escaping, exploring. Testing his range. His control. He returned every time, carrying strange items. Fragments of alien tech. Shards of old war satellites. Even a broken Harkoon emitter, dismantled and inert. Each time, he placed them at Eli's feet and waited. As if to say, this is what they made me from, but I am not them. Eli began logging every piece, every pattern, every behavior. It wasn't research. It was understanding. Ash wasn't growing stronger. He was growing free, from design, from instinct, from expectation. Every breath, every movement was a rejection of what he had been told to become. Years passed, and the name, Ash, spread beyond the farm. It entered military briefings, scientific papers, political debates. He was studied from afar, discussed in diplomatic councils, cited in ethics courses. Some called him a threat. Others, a miracle. But none of them knew him. Only Eli did. He never left the farm. Never needed to. Everything he had done had already changed the shape of the galaxy. Not through war or invention, but through one act. A refusal to give up on something designed to be used. Ash had once been a tool. Now, he was legend. And every evening, when the sun dipped low and the fields turned gold, he returned home. Not as a creature. Not as a weapon. But as a son.